Been meaning to do this for a while. Not good to set up some time and chop it up for a little bit with our head coach, our director of track and field, Ryan Heberling. And we're so used to, the coaching brand that you've built. We forget that you scored multiple times at the Sun Belt Conference Championships in the decathlon. Let us not forget about your days in the jav and decathlon. You got the trophies. I see that. We can't forget about that. You scored points.
Many years and many pounds ago. Many pounds ago.
Sun Belt, Fun Belt days, now earning trophies in
in
Conference USA. It's been a fun summer of travel for you. Just when the NCAA championships end, that does not necessarily mean the complete vacation mode per se as a coach, because more and more often now we're seeing our athletes with FIU compete in a number of summer competitions, whether that's the Pan Am Games or some U23 championships. So I think most recently, was it Costa Rica is the trip you just got back from? Tell us through, because I know Blake Orr's competed, Mikhail Valentin, who earned second team All-American honors for us, most recently competed. Take us through the summer of Ryan.
So, years ago, it was like you want to get to the conference meet, and that kind of feels like the peak of the season. Then all of a sudden it's like, all right, we made it to regionals. That might be the peak. And, now we get to the national championship and it's like, all right, that feels like the peak of the season. With as international as our team is and with the building of the program, I mean, it feels like it's more the middle of the season, not so much the end. We had athletes competing all the way up until August this year. So the first trip we took over the summer after nationals was, or after NCAAs, was the U.S. champs. We took 3 athletes out to there, out to Eugene, Oregon. It was a great trip. When you go to Eugene in like June, you might get, and you've been with us before, it's like, hey, it's a little warm during the days. It's really cold at night.
Yeah.
It was about 100 degrees at all times out there. It was the hottest I've ever been at Eugene. And I know it's known for that, late June. So the U.S. champs were awesome. We had Blake Orr get a medal there. We had Hannah Jansen qualify and CJ Cervenak as well. So we had 3 javelin throwers there. And it was an awesome experience. I mean, I think it's really big for our student athletes to be able to have that experience on the national stage, bigger than the NCAA. I mean, they're out there with multi-million-dollar professional athletes,
Right.
So to be on that stage and get a chance to compete with them, I think was really big for that confidence boost, and when you look at the 3, they're all American, the 3 Americans we took out there, CJ, Blake, and Hannah, they were all freshmen last year for us. It was their first year. So for them to be able to have that experience and then for Blake to have that success and get a medal is huge. It goes a long way. And let's fast forward to the next one. A couple weeks later, Mikhail and I went down to Costa Rica, San Jose, Costa Rica, and she got a chance to represent Team Haiti. I got to be a coach with them as well. And just a very eye-opening experience. It's been a goal of mine, my entire career to get a chance to kind of work with athletes on that national stage. And Mikhail's really special because she wasn't somebody we brought in who already competed on that stage. I mean, Mikhail was just, she was a state champion shot putter, but she wasn't somebody that was overly recruited. I think we were her only track and field offer at a high school.
Right.
So for us to come, for her to come from that spot of, no one really knew who she was to, being an All-American and getting 2 medals at the NACAC under 23 championships. I mean, that's huge. She was competing against the best of the best that pretty much this side of the world has to offer. And then for Blake and Blake called me up. It was really fun. An awesome experience. I'm driving home. I have both kids in the car and they're screaming and yelling, and Blake calls me. And anytime I get a phone call from an athlete over the summer, it's like, oh gosh, what's happening? I gotta take this call. So I'm like, hey, is everything all right? What's going on? And he goes, Team USA just called me. They're sending me to Puerto Rico. You got to go, all this stuff. So I was like, whoa, hold on. Like, what happened? And he's like, I made Team USA. And it was just like such a surreal moment as I'm driving home and, in that, like, I'm at a stoplight and I'm like looking up kayak. I'm like, okay, how much are the flights? What is this? How do I make this work? Where are the hotels?
Yeah.
And I was at the point where it's like, there's just been so much travel. I don't know if this is going to work and how's this going to work out. And so, I went home to ask my wife. And usually if I ask my wife, like, hey, there's this trip, what do you think? The usual response I would get is like, it's August, it's July, like you're off. I get home and she's like, yeah, go. And I was like, no, you're supposed to tell me to stay home. I want to I want to get a little family time.
To get out of the
And
house. She
get out
needs
of the house, go do
time.
this, have fun. And I was like, no, that's not the response you're supposed to tell me. You're supposed to tell me I need to stay home and be with the family. Long story short, I ended up kind of looking into flights and the logistics of everything, and it just didn't work. Luckily, Blake was with Team USA, and the national team coach that worked with them is somebody I know pretty well. So I said, "Oh, Blake, you're in great hands. You're going to do awesome." And he did. He PR'd by almost 3 meters, I
Yeah,
believe it was.
he did.
He set himself up to have a huge year this year. And again, you even look at some of the stuff he's done, and CJ and the whole summer group that we have, Hannah, Mikael, they did some amazing things this summer. And you still look there and you go, wow, there's still a lot we can build on. There's still a lot more things that we can kind of work through here. So I think the whole experience, everything as a whole, it was just awesome. And that's not even including we had multiple athletes over the summer competing and representing their countries that they just went back home and did it with their group. But we're starting to see now at FIU, we're having a much larger group that's really making FIU their home base. And what I kind of mean by that is, a lot of times, like we might get, our former athlete, Philippa Miller, she would, when she was over here, she was over here. And when she would go home, she'd have a training group in Sweden. And now we're starting to see that even some of our international athletes, and now we're getting a larger group of Americans as well, this is home base for them. So they're here year round, they're training year round, they're doing an awesome job. And that's, I think, one of the things that as we start to kind of set new goals as a program, there's a lot of milestones that we look at this year. One of them is this would be 10 years in a row we'd had an athlete at the national championship. That's got to be something somewhere that means something, at FIU. For us, it's just one of those things, like 10 years makes it tradition, that makes it like an expectation. And so now we're starting to look at new little things that we can kind of put I guess put a checkbox next to, and I think that next thing is just massive representation at summer track meets. And obviously with the Olympics coming up next year, we want to have athletes at the Olympic trials. So
Right.
I think this was definitely a good little getting our feet wet kind of moment.
The more you have athletes competing at these international competitions, do you see that transition, that carryover in mentality when, they may be at the Florida relays, but they're not wide-eyed at it, or a Conference USA championship meet. And, it's not as if they don't see the value in the importance of it, but they maybe approach it a little bit differently now with a bit more maturity and level-headedness with those international competitions they have today. And do you see that dynamic change in their mentality?
Yeah, I would compare it to the first time I ever drove on I-95 down in Miami. I mean, the first time you're like, what is going on? Now you're just like,
now we're built different. Now we're just a different caliber of driver.
The Palmetto, the the Turnpike doesn't matter. We're ready for anything.
Easy.
I think it does. It means a lot. Something we did last year that was really important for us, and we did it the year prior, but we noticed a little bit more of I think a little bit more return on it, a little bit more return on investment. We took a group out to Texas Relays this year, like we do every year. But what I noticed was that group, everybody that competed at that competition, it was a small group. I think it was 4 or 5. Almost all of them made it to the national championship, which was at Texas again this year. And then, or they made it to a summer track meet, so I think it was really important that you kind of get your butt kicked, Right. I think it's important when you not only see your heroes of the sport, but you compete against them. There is something to be said for that. I mean, we always want to win, but I think when you kind of experience a little bit of that, like, wow, like, there was a moment when we were at nationals, USA champs, and Hannah Jansen said this to me. She's like, why am I here? Like, I don't belong with them. And it's like, yes, you do. You kind of got to get your mindset of like, you do belong with them. And she did. She held her own. The place she went in ranked, she finished there, and it wasn't a beautiful day. I mean, sure. I'll be completely honest. We spent a couple weeks where it's like, summer started, you're good. And then a week, before the meet, I go, oh, hey, by the way, you qualified for Eugene. Pack your bag. We're leaving in 2 days. So me as a coach, I just kind of have to expect that, some of these athletes are going to go and compete at these meets. But when you kind of look at what we do, like starting in August, September, or in Mikael's case, she just never stops, even right. You tell her to take an off day and she's off doing something, and you just kind of look at it just like what we do becomes so much a part of your life. And it does work in kind of seasons and ebbs and flows there. But I think the biggest difference is that like our sport is one of those ones where, and I've probably said this, to you 1,000 times, like you can't hide anything. We can't make a play that's going to hide our weakness. We can't work towards our strengths. You're either fast or you're slow, you're strong, you're weak. You can either jump or you can't. And that's kind of where our sport really like has no gray zone. Things are very, very black and white in our sport. You're either working or you're not. You're having success or you're not. And so for our athletes, having a lot of experience with that and getting kind of used to that, I think is what really gets everybody prepared for that next level. I mean, I get excited about every single year, and this year I get especially excited just because it is an Olympic year and we actually have athletes that have a real legitimate shot to make it. So
love that. I love that mentality. There's no gray zone. When I die on mile 1.5 of a 5K, I know I'm not in shape.
We Coach Felix and Coach Sully, they always joke around because they'll occasionally, Coach Sully will hop in on a run with some of the distance runners. And when you go with somebody like Andrea Louisa do who can knock out 10 miles no problem, Coach Sully is going to be 30 soon. He'll go out there and he'll be like, "Well, what mile are we on?" And she's like, "Oh, it's only mile 3. We still have 2 more miles to go." And he goes, "Well, I'm just going to stop." And it's like, no, we went out 5. You're 5 away. You got to go back 5.
You're not looping it today.
There's no loops today.
Smart by her to take him on the out and back, so that there's right. No stopping early. She knew that was coming. Yeah, you mentioned 10 straight years now. Every year since you took over, you've had representation at the national championship. 3 this most recent campaign, and that was the most that FIU has had. What is your formula for identifying athletes that have potential? A lot of them are in these field events. We've had pole vault, jab, now long jump here recently. What's the formula for identifying? Mikael, you said we were her only offer, right? So how do you find this untapped potential? And then 2 years later, second team All-American. What's the formula for identifying those diamonds in the rough, and also just international athletes? Because we really do put the international in FIU and how we recruit and the makeup of our roster.
Yeah. Well, let's take it under the hood. We have tried a lot of different routes when it comes to how we kind of recruit and identify talent in the for the program. We've had those moments where we sit back and go, oh my gosh, we signed this kid. Wow.
Right.
And nearly every time that happens, that kid sometimes, most of the time, doesn't really work out. Whereas let's take it on the flip side. When you look at athletes like a Mikael Valentin, or take it back a few years, Teresa Russell, or any of them, Rima Odobor, when she first started here at the time, she was just another javelin thrower and, won a national championship last year. So when we kind of look at it from the perspective of who is going to have the highest ceiling, we really try to get a large group. I mean, our team right now is pretty big. We have nearly 90 student athletes on the team, and a good portion of them are scholarship student athletes. And the great thing about us being a public institution is we can sign somebody for a certain scholarship, and that we're going to get a lot of like institutional help as well that helps us sign a lot of kids. So we try to cast a wide net, and there's just certain things we look for. We want kids with a chip on their shoulder. We want those kids that say, "Man, I won a state championship in Florida," which means something.
Yeah.
Why does no one want me? Like, why hasn't X school called me, or Y school called me? And, I'm a very brazen person. I say, "Oh, those schools are dumb. That's why." They don't know. They don't see what we see. Maybe they have their nose up. I don't know. But what we do is we start to identify people that are going to work. And then secondly, we identify event groups that we just know how to do better here at FIU. Let's just call it what it is. I think when it comes to the throws and the jumps, we've definitely put in a great foundation, to the point now where, if you're a high level javelin thrower or pole vaulter, you probably emailed us, or we've had some kind of conversation. Right. Even on the distance side, with what Coach Felix has been able to do. And our goals are a little bit different on that side. I mean, we're trying to win a conference championship with cross country. We've really started to identify who's going to fit and who's not going to fit here, and Miami is an interesting place. It's one of those places that, what do people say all the time? It'll, get lost in the lights, I guess.
Yeah,
is one way to put it.
I've gotten lost. Yeah.
No, I've been lost many times. I found my way home.
Always get home.
Always get home. But, you can get a little lost here in Miami. You got to find people that can handle the city, and who was it, Coach Russell with men's soccer. He always says, are we recruiting somebody to be an athlete here, or do they want a vacation?
Right.
And I think early in my career, with our staff, it takes a while to kind of figure out who those kids are. Now it's kind of, you look at kind of those red flags, when when someone emails you and says, okay, how far away is the beach? How much does parking cost? You're like, wait. Ask about practice. Ask about this. Like, this probably is a good fit for you. And so I think for us, we really give an opportunity to athletes that feel like they can take it to the next level, but that maybe a certain school or a certain program they're looking at isn't quite giving them that attention. And they now know, with the foundation we've built up here over the last 10 years, well, I can do it here. I'm going to do it at FIU, where I know I'm going to get supported. And the other thing, I mean, I don't think my friends, and other teams are going to watch this and give me a hard time, but I don't think other programs work as hard as we do when it comes to getting down and dirty and teaching and really starting from bare bones, like the ground. I mean, we're not being handed the farm, we're being handed the bare land. It's like, you figure it out. Like, we don't have anything yet. But the cool thing is, the way I look at our athletes, they have all the potential in the world, they have all the talent. We just kind of have to mold it, a little bit. And I have kind of taken on this approach, and I think all of our coaching staff has this same approach. We don't lead by that do as I say, and that's it.
Yeah.
We're more of a, let's work together, figure out what works for you. If I have to whack myself in the foot with a javelin, and you'll throw a mark that gets the Olympics, well, I'll hit myself with a javelin every day. We'll do what it takes. And so I think we're one of those programs where nothing is above us. When it comes to the work that you have to put in, we're going to do it. I mean, I probably lose the first week or the first month of practice. I probably lose 10 pounds. There's some sweating outside from moving equipment and showing drills and just doing stuff. I mean, my gosh, 3 years ago, I tore my Achilles because I was at practice trying to get in the mix and stuff. So it's just one of those things where, yeah, that was a fun one. It's just one of those things where none of the work that you need to do, it's not above us.
Right.
We're the kind of coaches that, and I'm not trying to set this out here as like a recruiting thing. I just want people to know out there that we put in the time, we put in the effort. It's not just about checking off boxes at practice, and I think when you kind of take that mentality to work every day, if we're not going to just do the work, we're going to do it to the best of our ability. And that might mean a little bit of sacrifice on the coach's part. I really think at the end of the day, that's just what makes it different. When in the back of, all the coaches' cars, we have our event group shoes for us to give out and give an example. I just think that goes a lot further than do the drill. Well, I can't do it. Well, too bad. It's more of a, let me show you. I will show you. And I think our athletes appreciate that, and just the energy we bring to it. It's just, when you put all those things together of athletes that have the talent, maybe don't get the attention, have the chip on their shoulder, and then coaches that are willing to give you an environment where you are truly supported, that's just, it leads to where we've been now, and 17 All-Americans in the last 9 years, and hopefully some more this year.
Yeah, you don't take that mentality of like getting in the weeds and dirt unless you really believe in a place. And you put your resume out, and just like you said, calling a spade, there'd probably be opportunities to move up or be at the Power 5 level, but you really believe in what FIU's potential can be, the points it can score at the national level. Like, you get three people to nationals. I mean, if a couple of them score, I mean, you're a top 25 team. You're a top 25 right. team. We nearly saw that with Rima Otabor when she placed fourth. That, I mean, our points total put us above a lot of schools. So really, anything,
a lot of schools that are in Miami-Dade County. Just
exactly.
Throwing that out there.
if you get a couple of athletes, you never know what'll happen. So to that point, what is behind a lot of that philosophy, mentality? For what is your vision for what you feel that this program can be? I know we were talking about it the other day. It seems like we're at the point you can get a lot of athletes at least to the regional round of competition and prelims, and see what happens from there. But what is your vision for what this can continue to be?
I look at I'm one of those coaches. Like, I have my heroes in the sport too. Petros Cipriano, who's up at Illinois now, what he did at Georgia. I mean, he won 2 national championships, one on the women's side, one on the men, with a couple sprinters, 1 or 2 distance runners, and a very established and elite field event, group. And he basically did what no one else wanted to do. Not a lot of schools want to coach pole vault. That is, I think, one of the cool things about FIU. We're like, yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it. And when you look at javelin, not a lot of programs want to coach javelin. They don't want to coach hammer. They may not be willing to invest in their distance group. They may not want to have to worry about paying for implements. I mean, there's just so many things that go into it. The vision I have, and kind of going back to it when we look at some of the programs, Northern Arizona is a school I look at, University of New Mexico. Those are programs that have won, I believe, national championships in cross country. They did it, with distance only programs. They didn't do it with kind of the more like traditional way we look at programs, like a big giant sprint group, like, more of a balanced program. They didn't do it that way. They said, what works for where we are? Mm-hmm. And when I look at FIU and I think about the athletes we get here and the development we've been able to do, and the fact that, like this incoming recruiting class, we've got some of the best athletes in the world coming here. Yeah. Athletes that have competed at the world championships, for under 20s, and athletes that, before they got here are like, hey, coach, I'm going to be like a day late. I can't make the first team meeting because I'm coming back from the European championships. Hey, not a problem.
Can accommodate.
Yeah. Well, no worries. You medaled there. Yeah, not a problem. We'll figure it out. And not to sound so like overconfident with it, but we're getting to a point where people around the world notice and they say, hey, that is what's going on there. Yeah, I want to be a part of that. And so I look at those programs that have won national championships on the quote unquote like mid-major level, and it just tells me like we can do this, and I think there's like a very immediate goal of us wanting to be a top 25 program and understanding what that takes to be a top 25 program. You kind of got to score 9 or 10 points.
Yeah.
Now some people sit there and they say, oh man, that's a lot of points. If you put in the foundation, if you put in the work, it's possible. Nothing's easy. I don't think anything's easy in our sport. I think when it comes to like the women's track and field side, the participation numbers, it's the biggest sport in the NCAA. It's tough. We're talking now about the potential of not the potential, but just how many athletes qualify in our sport to the national championship. It's like 4%. When you look at kind of some of the other sports, like I think men's soccer is like 25%, men's basketball. There's a lot of basketball teams, but there's a lot of teams in the tournament. It's like 25, 30%. Track and field is the lowest. It's the hardest national championship to get into of any sport in college athletics. And so we kind of take that mentality every day and we say, hey, if you get here, it was so hard to get here. You can do anything. You can win, And so when I kind of go back to like, what's the vision for the program? I do see us being one of the best track and field programs in the country. I think the way we're going to do it is going to be a little bit differently than some of the more traditional programs. It's not like, you don't really see that as often anymore either. You don't really see they had 2 sprinters, 2 distance runners, 2 jumpers, 2 throwers, and a multi. Right. That's not really how our sport is anymore. Nowadays, it's, you look at University of Florida for their men's side and you say, how did they win the national championship? Coach Sully and I were talking about this the other day and we're like, where do they score their points? It was in the sprints and relays. And that was it. I think they had 1 jumper.
Yeah.
And so then you look at like the Georgia model a few years prior, it was like, where they score all their points? It was all field events, you look at like Arkansas years ago, where did they score the points? They had 1 sprinter, 1 jumper, and a bunch of distance runners. How you kind of go about winning a championship in our sport is so cool to me because there isn't one model you have to follow.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it so cool. And it's not like it's one of those models where it's like, I know with football, or basketball, it's like, all right, we're going to have a bunch of, we're going to play small ball. We're going to have, post. Football, it's like, all right, we're going to run the ball. Do we need a big line? Do we need to stop the run? Like, how are we going to do this? And it's like, you kind of see the teams that win kind of all have a similar kind of makeup. In our sport, you can go one year from some team having just pure distance to, wow, they won with all jumps. They won with all sprints, or man, they had 1 of each and nobody was great, but they balanced it out. I mean, it's just so cool how you can kind of put together a winning program. And I think that's why everybody's right and everybody's wrong. And that's what makes it so cool, because you kind of don't know what to expect each year. And, before before, like, let's just say, Remo Odobor was here, we would always have a good javelin thrower, but it wasn't an area where we said, oh, let's get a lot of javelin throwers. It was like, oh, we have one that's pretty good each year. It might win a medal, might, top 3, get to regionals, probably not going to get to nationals. To all of a sudden now it's like, we're a javelin school. We're going to have 4 or 5, 6 javelin throwers. Like, we found out we're good at it. And so it's one of those things where if you would have told me that 4 years prior, I'd say, I don't know. Now it's like, yep, let's do it.
Yeah.
Works for me. And so, I always tell, Coach Sully, because he'll be like, hey, can I do this? I'm like, well, if it works, it works. Like, let's not try to like overthink things, and, fast is fast, points are points. We don't care where they come from. So I think that's just kind of our mentality going long story here, getting back to it. We are a national program. I believe that. I truly do. And I know we get caught up in coach speak sometimes, and we're going to do this and that. And sometimes you start to hear like the broken record of programs, but I'll say this. I know the new NCAA football, I think it got delayed until next year, the video game.
Oh yeah.
I was never somebody that liked to play with the powerhouse team. I used to like to play with the team that was just like, I've never heard of this school. Let's see if we can get them to win a national championship. I think that, like, that ground up, plant the seed, which I love gardening. I'm an avid gardener. I don't like to buy plants, I like to buy seeds and start from zero.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think just kind of that mindset of like, let's go from zero to hero here. And we're in the midst right now, FIU, of being that, like, hey, they're getting there, and you can't talk about successful mid-majors track and field and not talk about FIU and some of the things we do. And so that's what I want. We want to turn heads here. And I don't know what that's going to end up with like the national championship, but like, we're committed to this being like, we want to do the unthinkable, the impossible, the things that other people think we can't. And I think that kind of taking that mindset every single day to what we do, it's just what separates us, from those other programs. And I think that moving forward, we know where it can go. And it may seem a little crazy to some people, but to us, it's just what we got to do the next day.
Well, eight straight years at the national championships has made a statement. By the way, tangent. Very excited to play as FIU on that video game next year.
That's where I found FIU.
Side tangent. I haven't entered my gardening stage yet, but I'm sure
it's coming.
Yeah,
I'll get you a tomato plant.
I've reached 30. Yeah, you give me one plant, I'll probably be hooked on growing my own tomatoes. Sound fun, actually. Now fun that I think about it. Moving forward, before we get into garden talk, last thing here, Coach Felix's cross country. They just had their highest finish at the conference championships in program history last year. In addition to that, what Felix has built with cross, and then you'll get into indoor. Just what has you excited about the upcoming year with FIU, and starting with cross country and just moving forward to indoor and outdoor. What are you looking forward to here this upcoming year?
Well, Andrea Louisadou, she's one of our returners with cross country. Even in that, I look at it as the distance group. We have 3 seasons, but she's kind of leading the charge there. And we brought in 3 freshman athletes. Anne from Spain. We have another young woman from France. And then we have Lorena, who's coming in from Croatia. Coupled with the athletes we already have here, I feel like we have a great foundation, a great base. They just finished running their summer seasons back home. They all dropped some amazing times. I think Anne went 4:24 in her last 1500. These are great times. These are times we weren't recruiting, 5-6 years ago. So when you start to look at some of the athletes we have coming in, the expectation gets a lot higher. And we finished 4th last year. Coach Felix and I have talked about it, and I support that program any way that I possibly can. We want a trophy. We are going to have to be very, we're going to have to be very diligent with how we train and how we work. But, Coach Felix and I had a conversation after the cross country championships last year. And he, we're sitting there in the hotel room, just kind of taking a breather. And, he was bothering me and I was trying to watch my Netflix, but he was just like, listen, we can do this. And, he showed me that we looked at that 4th place finish and we said, we can do this. And so, typical coaches, we sit there and start to like do the math of, all right, what do we have to do this year? What do we have to do next year? And we don't want to put like a cap or a limit on our success. We just want to say, let's be better. Let's just be better.
Yeah.
Whether that's a better average time for the team, whether that's a better point scoring, or better it's a better place. We just want to be able to show improvement there. I mean, that's our most important thing with cross country.
Well, it's exciting to look at. And look, as a distance person here previously, I know how hard it is to recruit to cross country in South Florida. But
when you're in the asphalt jungle, it can be.
Yeah, but there are benefits, and if you can get through the training, you're going to be a strong runner.
You just gotta run at 4 a.m. before the sun comes out. That's all.
Got to get up. That's the secret. Run early, get sleep. That's the secret sauce for distance. Well, this has been fun, Coach. I know it's been a eventful summer for you, from Eugene to Costa Rica, and that'll only continue here as the fall practices get kicked off for you. But as much FIU pride as anyone in our department, and as much success as well. So thanks for the time. We appreciate it. And
thank you.
Best of luck here this season.
You have a good one, AJ. Paws up.
Paws up.